In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing a book, but I'm also going to be giving an update about my channel. So previously, I did a video where I talked about I got my first article published in the Missouri Department of Natural Resources magazine, Missouri Resources. I was super excited about this. Like, I'm finally published. My name is out there. My work is out there. And I'm working on my own book, as I explained in that video, about part autobiography, just about myself, and then part educational for anyone who wants to get into fly fishing. And so while I'm working on that, I'm writing articles about different topics and working to get those published in different websites and magazines and publications, all that stuff. And so I'm having a lot of fun with that. Since doing that video, I started doing book reviews, and I've done 10 videos regarding books. None of them really had to do with conservation or hunting or fishing, which is what this channel is primarily about. So I'm going to kind of change that a little bit and stuff, and so the channel will still have book reviews because I enjoy reading books, I enjoy learning, but the books will either be about hunting, fishing, conservation, with the occasional other book and stuff that are just books that I really like. I know I've talked about Ryan Steck's books, the Matthew Red series, and as he comes out with more of those, I'm still going to have those. But the primary focus and the books that I'm going to review are going to be related to conservation, wildlife, and all that stuff. I know that in the reviews, or not reviews, but in the watches, the views of the videos on my channel and stuff, I know that fly tying is what people are interested in, and I'm going to have a lot more of those. I have them all lined up, and again, I'm going to have a new video coming out every Saturday. So this book that I'm reviewing today is kind of starting that off with talking more about nature and conservation related books. So this one is Poachers Were My Prey, and this is by R.T. Stewart, but the person who wrote the book is W.H. Chip Gross, and they both work together for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and after R.T. Stewart had retired, he had Chip write this book for him. And so I was going to go through each chapter and talk about, kind of highlight a summary about what it's about. I don't want to give too much away because I encourage you to read this book and stuff. I first got it as a audiobook, and I started listening to it. And my wife, who also loves hunting and fishing, she sort of got drawn into it as well and like really enjoyed listening to it. And so we were listening to it together. After I finished it, I looked up and I didn't see that that RT had any website or social media, but Chip did, and he has a website. It's in the description of the video below. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, I really enjoyed this book. Is it possible to to get a signed copy? And sure enough, I got a signed copy of Poachers Were My Prey. And then he has a whole bunch of other books on the website and stuff. So again, I encourage you to go there. The other one that I got and stuff, because I thought it would be something that would help me and stuff, is How to Become a Freelance Outdoors and Nature Writer. So I'm still in the middle of reading this one, but I will do a review on this book as well. But everything I've read so far is very beneficial to me writing, whether it's writing the book I'm working towards or writing articles. And some of the examples, just in the little bit that I've read so far, some of the examples and stuff would have been helpful had I read that prior to reaching out to different publications. And then some of the stuff that he talks about is stuff that I've went through, so he knows what he's talking about. And again, that'll be a book for another time. But again, so I'm going to review Poachers Were My Prey. The first chapter is actually a foreword written by Kevin Odell. He's a former supervisor of R.T. Stewart. And he's talked about in several of the chapters of the book. And Kevin Odell gives his thoughts on R.T. Stewart and that how hard that he worked and stuff at being a game warden, And so they had a very good working relationship, which comes up many times in other chapters. The second chapter is the introduction, and it's where Chip Gross talks about his relationship with R.T. Stewart and how they work together for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. For Ohio, the Department of Natural Resources encompasses both natural resources and wildlife. And I understand that some states do that. Here in Missouri, there's actually a Department of Conservation which handles all wildlife, game warden related things. And then there's a Department of Natural Resources which just handles the air and the soil, water, hazardous waste, things like that. But Chip talks about his relationship with R.T. Stewart, and then they even shares a story where Chip had actually wrote an article about the undercover operations when Ohio started doing that and having undercover officers, undercover game wardens. And he actually put out an article. They didn't name any of the officers and stuff, but in the particular case that RT was working on, the poachers actually found that article and it actually showed it to RT, which kind of put him in a bind. He had to play it off like oh, that's crazy, and stuff. And so his cover wasn't blown, but definitely him and RT and Chip had a conversation after that. In chapter 1, it's called Operation Clan Bake, and it was in 1992. RT, it was I think his first undercover operation, and so he had to infiltrate a group that were doing both illegal deer hunting and snagging walleye. In it, he had a partner, Don, and together they went undercover and they infiltrated basically two groups of people that were doing all these illegal activities. And as part of it and stuff, RT had to join in them and stuff. If the opportunity presented itself where he's supposed to shoot a deer, he would try and purposely miss. But that wasn't always the case, and so he had to actually illegally take game as well in order to keep his cover. Being new for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Wildlife Division, they were still learning. Everybody was still trying to figure things out. And so one of the first experiences was RT was in a car with one of the poachers. They went on high-speed pursuit and everything, or a high-speed chase with the cops. And quickly after that, RT realized, I've got to maintain control in all these situations, because I can't have the bad guy controlling a wheel and then end up doing more damage or killing us. And so that was something that he learned, as well as dealing with self-doubt. A lot of responsibility was on him, trying to get this figured out. And then he had a DNR vehicle that was given to him, but it went back to a lease company. And one time he was pulled over by a local police department, and he had to keep his cover the entire time. And so he's giving them the fake name, the license plate isn't coming back, and it's basically getting him deeper and deeper, but he had to keep his cool. He had to still give him the alias and everything. And then finally, when basically he was in cuffs and they were going to take him, to jail, he basically gave him his supervisor's name. They explained it and stuff, and the local PD obviously wasn't happy about it and stuff, and so they let him go. He and Don had to stay in a filthy house. RT talks about that, where he would have to live near the poachers, but not too close that they could stop by every time, and that he doesn't get any personal time or time away from the case. And how he first met the different poachers and stuff. So he talks about that, and in a lot of the cases, it was interesting. He would look for like yard sales near around the poacher, and then he'd go to the yard sale. He'd start talking to that person and stuff, and well, I'm here to hunt deer, or I'm here to hunt turkey, or whatever the case may be. And then they would basically, oh yeah, there's a neighbor of mine who does that and stuff. Well, that neighbor was the actual poacher and stuff. Well, he'd get the neighbor who had the yard sale and stuff. Then he would go directly to the poacher's house, and say, well, I was talking to so and so, and it basically was an icebreaker that would work for him to basically get close to the poacher, and then them start talking. And so I thought that was something really interesting, and it seemed to work. I think 90% of the time, from the impression I got in the chapters that he talks about it. So that was chapter 1. In the second chapter, it's called Operation Redbud, and it's about different poachers with the illegal taking of turkey. And in the chapter, he's still partners with Don. He has a van that has recording equipment that he controlled with buttons or levers on the steering column or on the dash that would record audio or video both inside and outside of the van. It was on this case and stuff that Don had started questioning how close they were getting to these poachers. It got to the point where they were almost becoming friends with them. They still knew, Don and RT still knew the whole time that they were, game wardens that are undercover. But when they're close enough and that these poachers are, talking about life and, daily activities, and, the one was asking for marriage advice. One of the poachers, his wife was basically flirting with RT, wanting to have an affair. So there was all that, those issues, that you have to, keep both your fictional self and your real self, separated. He started using a video camera with these poachers and stuff out in the open, because they were making hunting videos, which later would incriminate them. One of the videos RT had signed off under his fictitious, or his name, his alias. And that was sort of what struck him, like, wait a second, I'm not even, they weren't even around, and I'm not signing this video off under my real name, it's under my alias, how deep am I getting into this? And so those are the details about chapter 2. In the third chapter, it's called Operation Ego, and RT talks about that people were illegally harvesting deer for the antlers, and it was a short assignment. It was in 94, 95, I believe, and it was only lasted like 2 months, and it involved basically like other people chasing after the poachers, and including a plane flying above them to basically keep an eye on the poachers who were racing away from the police at night. The poacher, one of them had actually went for one of the arresting officers' guns, and so that officer got to tell about it in his own words in that section. So yeah, that was chapter 3. The fourth chapter is called Operation Tag, and it's about different game checking stations handing out basically blank tags, and then the hunters or poachers, get to fill it out themselves and stuff, causing a whole mess of legal issues. And so I know a lot of states, like Missouri, has apps now, so you don't actually have to go to the local gas station or game checking stations and get a tag. You can just log it all on an app and stuff. And I see the pros and cons of both systems. I don't know how many states do the apps versus doing the tags. But on one side, I like that Missouri does do the app. But I also remember when I was younger, during deer season, you pull in get gas or snacks or something at a local gas station, and there'd be several trucks there, with deer, and the sort of sense of community and everybody talking about it and stuff, comparing stories, and so moments like that are kind of gone, so that's saddening and stuff, but yeah, so that's something else that RT had to encounter was, it's not just an individual person or a group of friends that are illegally, hunting. It could be a whole system. It could be, like in this case, gas station or a tag checking station, giving out tags when they shouldn't. So anyway, that's what Chapter 4 discusses. Chapter 5 is called Operation River Sweep, where RT had went after a particular poacher, but actually kind of found another one and kept trying to get in contact with the first one. The first one, the main poacher that they were after, his mother owned a trailer court, and so that's where RT had stayed. And again, awful conditions and stuff, cockroaches everywhere, not only his, but in other families and stuff, to where in one example and stuff, kids were taken away from their parents and stuff because of the unsanitary living conditions. RT eventually meets up with this bad poacher, and there was illegal activity, with catfish, with coon hunting, and he later basically joins through doing a poker game, and starts like talking and becomes basically friends with this large group, and then he finds out more and more poachers and people that are doing different things, and even after he had been friends or proven himself and all that and stuff at different times, later they brought up that one of the guys had shot a bald eagle, but they don't know, RT didn't know if they actually did or not, but this seemed to be a trap that they were setting to see, how will RT respond to this. Will he seem to care or will he not? Well, he kept his cool, didn't even contribute much to the conversation, and then later found out it was basically the poachers like testing him. So even after months of being undercover with one group and stuff, you always have to keep in mind, you're the game warden, they're the poachers, you need to watch out for yourself. In Chapter 6, it's called Operation Cornerstone, and RT investigates the illegal harvesting and selling of yellow perch. I've never caught a yellow perch. I've never eaten a yellow perch, but I'd like to, legally, obviously. There's a lot of fish out there that I'd like to, to catch that I haven't before. But anyway, in this chapter, he basically goes undercover and goes to a bar and like starts socializing with them, and it's just like well, I can't seem to catch them and stuff. I wish I could buy some, and then they voluntarily, well, I've got some to sell you, and he starts basically moving up in popularity with all these poachers and all these businesses and stuff, and they're selling him tons and tons of not literal tons, but a bunch of yellow perch. And his excuse is, well, I have friends in West Virginia that are buying all this, and just different people keep popping up, and it's more money than the DNR will give him to purchase. And so, he's wanting more and more money so that he can purchase all this fish and get more and more poachers and stuff and have evidence on them. But they don't allow that. During this chapter, it's also when his supervisor changes, and it's a supervisor that's more into protecting himself and reputation, rather than wanting a good outcome for the game wardens and the undercover game wardens. During this time, his wife, RT's wife, basically says that she wants a divorce, that she's leaving him because of basically all the time that he's spending away from home. They'd been married for 22 years, so he's going through that. His dad gets cancer, so he's dealing with that, and so you have to balance that personal side as well as your work life, which in any job you have to do that and stuff, and but it's even obviously more stressful in a situation like this, where you have to pretend to be somebody else all the time, and hide those emotions and stuff of things that's happening in your real life. there is a funny moment and stuff where one of the poachers, explains that he's with the Coast Guard, and so immediately RT interrupts him, and well, if you're undercover and stuff, we have to prove it. Prove you're not wearing a wire, and basically everyone standing there and stuff, drop their pants and stuff to prove they're not wearing a wire, and then the poacher's like, well, you didn't let me finish. I was just dishonorably discharged from the Coast Guard, and I hope that doesn't have any negative bearings on the business that we're doing and stuff. And so that's kind of a humorous moment, as well as the fact that RT was wearing a wire. It was just under his shirt. So the chapter 6 is a very eventful chapter. In chapter 7, it's called Operation Stir Fry, and it's a case where they work with an informant who is a criminal himself, but he's giving the police the details and everything. And so RT, talks about in the book, where, informants can be good. They can also be bad. They can turn on you at any second, or they can, be a huge asset, to getting you into, this, poacher and criminal organization. In this case, it was, a group of Asians that had a house, with a garage, and they were accepting all different, wildlife. And so in this case, it was the informant, RT, and his partner were dropping off 7 deer. And in this garage, there was also possums, there were raccoons, and they were basically taking all these meats and then sending them to and let me back up. The game was like not even fully field dressed, some of it and stuff, or it had sat there for a long time, so it wasn't good game anymore. But they were sending it basically to a restaurant in Cleveland, and using it for sweet and sour pork recipes and other recipes, which at this point, when my wife and I hear this, we understand that obviously bad game, that would be awful and stuff. But then we're also thinking, well, how would a dish, like a sweet and sour pork, dish be with venison? That actually could be good, and stuff. And if people were ordering these dishes and stuff, and they were getting deer, but thinking it's pork, you kind of not realizing how good you have it, that you're getting free deer meat. But later in the chapter, it was said that they were never able to prove, due to the time period when this happened in, and like DNA testing and all that and stuff, they weren't ever able to prove that the restaurant was serving that. But they had went and got snapping turtles. That was something else that they had illegally poached. Same thing with black bear, and that's actually the delivery of the black bear that ended up catching one of the individuals in the chapter. In chapter 8, it's called Operation Camp Kill. RT gets a new partner, and so they go undercover, and it's a house or a lodge where a lot of these poachers are staying together. And so they, talk to the group, and they eventually get there, and the group's like, oh, well, plug in your camper, on our property. And, RT wants to stay separate from them. And so, he's like, no, we'll stay somewhere else. Well, they end up staying there, and end up actually even staying in the house. And the partner, was, saying he's got this, everything's fine. But then he has, restless nights of sleep, because, he's worried that any of these poachers, could find out who he is and kill him in the middle of the night, and things like that. There's also other issues where RT, the partner, and one of the poachers go out turkey hunting, and the partner ends up saying RT's name, or saying RT, and he has to quickly recover. The poacher, as far as they know, didn't catch on anything, but that was an issue, that you're worried about your identity being blown, and here your partner could be the one that unintentionally do that. And then as well as one of RT's recording devices starts making a beeping noise, and he had to choose to ignore it, and then ends up getting a beeper that beeps the same sound, and basically like has to like purposely have that go off in the future, so that, you know, if anyone heard it the first time and stuff with his recording device, they'll just think it was a beeper, but not draw attention that he's doing this. So that was some things he encountered there. And him and his partner end up taking time off from the operation, and then they go back to it. They return back to that house, and all the poachers are gone. There's a couple living there. The house is dilapidated. Basically, the entire group of poachers had some sort of a falling out, and were all using drugs. And so this was a case that, and I still obviously encourage you to read it and stuff, but this was a case where they spent 1.5 years undercover, and basically it fell apart before they could even make any arrests. So that's another part of being game warden, you know, is undercover game warden, is that, you know, you may spend all this time and then have no results due to things out of your control. Chapter 9 is called Operation Take 'Em. It's another large, eventful chapter where there's different ducks and waterfowl and geese and deer poaching. And so RT, you know, with a partner, you know, infiltrates that group, and then basically finds kind of another poacher and then another poacher, and then basically, you know, becomes friends with them and everything, attends one of the poacher's wife's birthday party. He has a student or a new game warden that ends up like staying with him but isn't supposed to do any undercover stuff, and then the poachers end up showing up at, you know, RT's house, the fictional house, or the one he's renting, and so he has to, you know, basically explain everything to the new game warden really quick. And so then that game warden, you know, has to, you know, basically stay quiet, play along, all that kind of stuff. You know, with one poacher, RT gives him gives them the video camera. Well, if you guys are, you know, such a good shot and stuff, you know, take this video camera and, you know, prove, you know, how many, you know, deer and stuff you're getting. And they take the video camera and they record themselves, which just got the evidence together, you know, for RT. So that was kind of a funny part. And then also during this, Stress had, you know, over, you know, years of cases and being undercover, Stress had gotten to RT, and so he ends up basically having kind of a heart attack. And so he goes to the doctors, and much like the police officers from that previous chapter, he remains undercover and gives them an alias. You know, and then as soon as the doctor's office finds out that he doesn't have insurance under that name, basically they're trying to kick him out of the hospital. You know, his supervisor comes in, explains, you know, what went on, and, you know, that he's undercover and all that and stuff. But basically they still had him leave and go to a different hospital closer to his real life home. And to this day, anytime that RT needs like his medical records and stuff, because the heart attack was entered under his fictitious name, he has to explain that, and it's difficult for him to get his own medical records. So that was something that I, you know, never even thought of, you know, as somebody who's undercover, you know, because, you know, to me, I would just think, you know, well, just, you know, this is serious, let me give him my real name. But, you know, obviously, you know, you could end up saying that to a doctor, and the doctor could somehow be friends with a poacher, you know, and blow everything up. So, you know, that's a mindset and something you have to figure out that, you know, that I didn't even think about. And so that actually ended up being RT's last case before retiring on medical disability. So that's a very eventful chapter. In chapter 10, it's called Operation Enough. I believe at this point, I don't remember if RT was retired or if this was kind of reflecting back when he still was undercover game warden. But it actually had to do with his own neighbors, and you know, him as RT, not undercover. He had basically written a citation to one of his neighbor's sons, and then the neighbors, upset about it, and basically they kind of organize a undercover operation and stuff, not involving RT, but these others, as well as a local sheriff who also had evidence on this neighbor, and so he provided that evidence and everything, and so they were able to arrest and find out that this family, this neighbor, had basically been taking illegal deer, and been a nuisance to the neighborhood, as a result and stuff, there was the local sheriff, his property got vandalized. RT had some of his coon dogs had been killed, and so they that talks about you're doing the right thing, and still negative things can come from that, but it's still people standing up for what's right, and the guilty parties being held guilty and justice being served. Chapters 11 and 12 are called Training Day, Preparing to Go Under, and Living the Lie, Some Final Thoughts. I'm lumping the description or the summary of those two chapters together. That is RT talking about both how when the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Division started going undercover, how he did research and gained his skills, whether that was trying to learn what surveillance equipment and audio and video recording equipment is out there, to learning hand-to-hand combat, to learning how to interact with people, which he had a natural gift for. And it also 11 and 12 are kind of similar and stuff in that RT gives advice to anyone who wants to be a game warden. Here's how you can think about things, what you need to learn. And he also talks about his time as an instructor, and what they had the students do. They had to get them into uncomfortable positions and stuff, so that you can think outside the box, so that you can be comfortable with being uncomfortable, in order to have those skills to protect yourself and serve justice as an undercover game warden. One of the things that they had the students do, which I kept trying to think, could I do that, is they would drive the group of students to a random area, and say, there's an apartment building and stuff. Now you have 15 minutes to talk to one of the apartments up there, one of the residents, and be able to get into their apartment and then wave from the window down to us, all in 15 minutes. So you have to have charisma. You have to have a more dominant personality and stuff in order to talk these people into that kind of thing. And so that was one of the tasks, and something that I thought was neat, and it made me question, could I do that? And I don't think I could, but yeah. So those are all the chapters and a summary of the book. Again, it was about RT Stewart, who lived all these operations and everything. But again, Chip Gross is the one who wrote it. I really liked his writing style. So I don't know how RT presented all this information to him, but Chip Gross's writing style I really liked, and the way that the stories went and everything. And I understand that they changed some of the names and the details, and that's why I said poachers through it and stuff, was because some of the names I could be providing and stuff could be fictitious names anyway. And there's a lot of details I left out of these chapters and stuff, because I highly encourage you, if you're a hunter, even if you're not, if you like books about the law, police officers, justice, true stories, autobiographies or biographies, again, this will interest you. And so, like I said, when I reached out to Chip Gross, I've only talked to him through email a couple times and stuff, and seems to be a very polite, and knowledgeable person. And again, like I said, I'm reading this book. I'll also do a review on that. But he has a bunch of other ones. There's another book that I remember on the website and stuff. It's about walleye fishing in the Great Lakes. I've never been to the Great Lakes. I would love to. I would love to fish there. Take a boat out and everything. I've never caught a walleye, and I'd love to do that and stuff. So just those things, I'm interested in that book as well. So, but yeah, if you've read this book, let me know in the comments below. If from this video you go out and read that book and stuff, let me know your thoughts, in the comments below. Are you a game warden, and have similar experiences? Let me know in the comments below. So I've actually reached out to the Missouri Department of Conservation, and maybe I can get an interview with a game warden, with some more stories and stuff like that. I don't know if that'll happen, but that's something that's possible on the channel. So please like and subscribe to the videos, and again, Chip Gross's website is in the description below. Please give his website a visit, and I very much appreciate you guys watching my videos and stuff, and so thank you.